Hi everyone, welcome to Land and Sea. I'm Jane Adey. This week we take you back in history to learn about a group of men who played a critical role in remote parts of this province, the Newfoundland Rangers. Theirs is a history marked by bravery and tragedy. Back in 2002, producer Bob Wakeham brought us some of the stories of the Newfoundland Rangers. Be sure and watch this show until the end when we'll speak with the last living ranger, Cyril Goodyear.
No.
How are you feeling?
No. Yeah, bro.
The aging process is rarely subtle. It makes it difficult to imagine this group of old men performing the enormous duties required of them over a half-century ago.
So I would like to welcome you.
But the impediments of age can't deny the legacy of these surviving members of the Newfoundland Rangers. In their day, the 30s and 40s, they had a phenomenal influence on the lives of rural Newfoundlanders and Labradorians.
Now I think we can get on to the roll call.
They're generally thought of as having been policemen, and they were, indeed, cops who carried guns and enforced the law. But the Rangers also represented every department of the Commission of Government, the appointed body that ran Newfoundland affairs from 1934 to 1949. And there was hardly an aspect of life in rural Newfoundland in which the Rangers were not involved. That broad mandate, requiring brains and brawn, was carried out when most Newfoundlanders still lived an isolated existence.
Here was a body of men who were very well educated for their time. A grade 11 in Newfoundland in 35 was like a PhD now. And we've fulfilled the role of MHAs, town councillors, and numerous other officials that are around now to put their various reports into departments of government. And we did all those things.
The doctor at Whitburn, Dr. Newhook, he gave us lessons in first aid, dentistry. A lot of our boys used to pull teeth, you know. I never did. I loosened up a few, but I never pulled any.
We were the main contact, there's no doubt about that. We were the main contact of the people in the outlying areas of Newfoundland with government.
To tell you the truth, I feel I got a story to tell, but whether it gets around to it, and to be able to convert it, to put it on paper is,
Like most of the Rangers, Frank Mercer, now closer to 90 than 80, has more than just one story to tell. Some of his experiences as a ranger in the isolated wilds of Labrador would make a movie director drool. But the most amazing story in Frank Mercer's career concerns the 2.5-month trip he took in the Labrador wilderness with a corpse. 72 days by dog sled with a coffin containing the body of a man who appeared to have been murdered. Mercer knew an autopsy was required.
Well, the only doctor on the coast that time was the Grenfell doctor, and the only one on the coast that time was by the name of Dr. Forsyth, and he was in residence at Cartwright, and that was about 600 miles away.
And away they went. Ranger Mercer, his guide, Zachariah Sikosick, and a dead man.
And all the way down, lots of times I sleep on the box, you know, not trying to be big or anything like that, but I had no room there, you know. We had a driver there and a heavy box, another man, and our grub and everything like that. But we had a very heavy load, but when we get on good ice and all that, I'd straighten up and be sleeping back on top of the box.
So you'd sleep on top of the dead guy?
Lots of time, yeah.
But the two men and their dead traveling companion occasionally stayed in villages along the way. And while there, Mercer always ensured the body was protected.
Every place you go to, almost every home got a scaffolding there, you see. And that's where they up so the dogs wouldn't get at and eat the stuff, you know. So I used to have to put the body up there for they'd eat him. Yes.
At one point during Mercer's remarkable trip, he briefly lost the body and almost lost his guide.
We lost control, two of us, you see, and it went ahead and bumps into a lumber house or something like that, and the body came out. And when he seen the body come out, he took off on me.
How come?
Well, he got frightened then, you know, he didn't want to see the body. He couldn't see it before because, you know, it was buried up in the box all the time, you know. But when he saw the body, well, he wasn't staying around.
He just got spooked, you mean?
Oh, yes, oh, yes. You know, very, very scared. Well, who wouldn't be scared? I was scared myself, but I know I had to go ahead and pick it up. And then I got the body in the box, but I couldn't find Zach. I didn't want to go without him. But I know he was behind me, see, and I could see him in the distance. So I went on, and eventually we got to Port Melbourne, but he turned up there too, you know. The peculiar part about it there, when I told Emma Puniguniac was an old friend of mine. He was a bit of a witch doctor as well, you know. He says he fixed that up. So he got an old seal's putty and he blew up and he put it on a stick and put it on the box. With the box, the corpse in there, you know. And then he got a raven's claw. Where he got it to? He got they have all kinds of birds there, you know. And he hung that around Zach's neck, eh? Zach was number one after that. That's actually a fact. Yeah, I didn't care what they hung around his neck as long as he went, you know. And
when he completed his astonishing trek and arrived in Cartwright, Mercer had the autopsy carried out. His dead passenger, it turned out, had been accidentally poisoned, not murdered. But Mercer's job was far from finished. He felt an obligation to take the man's body all the way back to Nain.
On the way back, I there in Tishialuk, very mild weather and that, and he started to thaw out, so I had to bury him there. And I buried him in Tishialuk there, you know.
66 years later, sitting in his backyard in Bay Roberts, Mercer acknowledges that the entire episode was almost beyond belief.
I know it was strange, it's unusual, and it's extraordinary, you know, but there I was a policeman, and I was conscious of my job and my responsibilities, and I had to do it. I didn't want to do it, but I had no choice.
Isolation for many of the Rangers meant communication with their families was often limited. For Ches Parsons, that limitation had sad repercussions at one point in his career while on board a vessel off the Great Northern Peninsula.
The captain came down and said it was time for us to go and listen to the Gerald S. Doyle news bulletin. As we went to his room, the Gerald S. Doyle news bulletin was on, and the news came over the bulletin at that time. The person by the name of Robert Parsons had drowned in freshwater Bell Island. So I was taken aback about this, and the captain looked at me and said, "What's wrong?" I said, "That was my brother." He was 14 years of age at the time. There was no way for me, of course, to get home in time for the funeral. It was a month or so after that that I asked for permission to go home to give some consolation to my distraught parents.
One of the higher profile stories from the Newfoundland Ranger past began on May 8, 1943. That's when Ranger John Hogan, along with 3 other men, was forced to parachute out of a burning airplane over the Great Northern Peninsula.
Hogan landed on a frozen lake, and the next day he came across the footprints of somebody else, and he caught up to him, and this was one of the other passengers, the Corporal Butt of the Royal Air Force, RAF. This chap had lost one of his boots, and he had his foot was beginning to freeze, and after a day or so on the go, he couldn't walk any further, and they came to a trapper's cabin, and they got in there, and the Butt couldn't walk any further, and that's where they stayed for the next 50 days or so.
It was a remarkable 50-odd days. I think it was 51 days in the country, tending to his companion, and this was, of course, his prime concern because he had had frostbitten feet, and it was necessary not only for him to keep him fed, but to attend to the injuries to his feet as well.
51 days later, there was a survey crew coming up this lake where the cabin was situated, and they saw this figure on the beach waving to them. They went in, and this was Hogan. He had lost 80 pounds. He walked from the end of the lake. He walked out to Port au Choix, and the other chap had to be carried on a stretcher, you know. He's a remarkable man.
I mean, the guy had to be a genius, you know, and you just think of how disciplined he was to be able to do what he did and not panic and not leave the fellow, and subsist on 6 rabbits. That's all he caught. And I remember when he told the story at the police college, somebody said, "How much of the rabbits did you eat?" And he said, "Everything but the squeal."
That's where we had our camp.
It's been over 50 years since John Fagan has been anywhere near this mountaintop just outside Stephenville, the scene of what was his most memorable and most horrific experience as a Newfoundland Ranger, a 1946 airplane crash that killed over 40 people.
The burial site is located about 100 feet below where these markers are. We didn't bring the bodies up to the top of the mountain. We buried them where they crashed.
If it happened today, an aviation disaster of the magnitude of the 1946 crash would generate the appearance of hundreds of rescuers, investigators, and journalists. But back then, the grisly job of locating the bodies was left up to 2 Rangers, Gordon Fitzpatrick and John Fagan.
When we arrived here on the following day, there was the fire was still smoking, but there was no flame, and the remnants of the plane were scattered over a wide area. There was no way of identifying the type of plane. Everything was blackened. The woods were all burned, charred. Now, I remember when we were coming up coming up over the hill, I reached for a blackened stump, as I thought it was, and when I caught hold of it, I realized it was an elbow of a human being. And that was the first body we discovered.
I mean, you were a young man then, John. Obviously, not too many people are ever exposed to anything like that, but I mean, how did you handle it?
I was 27. Well, we were out here by ourselves, myself and Gordon Fitzpatrick was the sergeant. And it was sickening at first, but you know, it was a job to be done, and we just kept at it. And we got used to it. Yeah. But that was a very unique experience for me. I didn't have anything like it before or since. Yeah, William R. Westerfield, Cap. There's another one, James M. Berry, Flight Officer, American Overseas Airlines. Yeah. It's a pity they're such, they've been neglected. Herbert Ewing, Purser, American Overseas Airlines. Took me 56 years to find out the names of the people we buried down there.
They may have a monument at the Colonial Building, but the Rangers themselves seem to concede that their place in history is not nearly as pronounced as it should be.
There needs to be a greater emphasis on Newfoundland history in the schools, of which the Ranger Force is a part. And I think that every effort must be made to preserve that identity and provide access to our real history to our children.
Including the Rangers.
Including the Rangers. Including the Rangers. Well, we were, in terms of time, we occupied a very short space of time, but we were an integral part of the history of Newfoundland.
"204 men served as Newfoundland Rangers. There is only one living ranger left today, and that is Cyril Goodyear, who you just saw in that Land and Sea show from 2002. This season, we visited Mr. Goodyear at his home in Deer Lake.
What do you think, sir? Were enjoying your ride today, boy?
Yes, bye.
Cyril Goodyear will be 99 in April. This past summer, Debbie Collins provided him care at home and regular outings in her side-by-side. Mr. Goodyear was a Newfoundland Ranger from 1945 to 1950. He went on to be an RCMP officer, a provincial court judge and chief judge, the province's deputy attorney general, a deputy minister in the government, registrar of the Supreme Court, and eventually returned to his hometown of Deer Lake to be mayor.
I used to travel all the way up to by dog team and everything years ago. And you know, we used to have 9 dogs, one walrus hide loop, and each one had his own trace, And there's always a female dog was the leader.
His mind can't keep track of all of his adventures, but it is clear when speaking with him, his memories of his days as a ranger are fond ones.
That's the best group of people I ever worked with. Yeah. And we did everything, no matter what the hell it was. Yeah. Even if somebody was fixing their roof, and you go and give them a hand. Yeah. So we weren't far from
Cyril was stationed in Battle Harbor, Labrador for a time. Then he took up a posting much farther north.
When I went to Nain, the shack was just clapboard on a post, and almost out inside. And I mean, there's some coal up there. So what I did, I cut big snow blocks out and put it all around the place to keep it warm, Yeah, yeah. I must say I have some wonderful memories of Labrador, and the people I dealt with, you know. And you had to put in a report once a month, a complete report, send in to St. John's. Yeah.
And what did you detail in those reports?
Well, I can't remember now, but all the stuff, you know, welfare, crookedness, and whatever, eh? Yeah, yeah, we did everything. Yeah.
You were the eyes in the community for law enforcement. You had to have a hand in everything.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. That was one of the best organizations I've ever been involved in. Yeah, yeah. And I'm the Lone Ranger.
He's the very last of those who served. Mr. Goodyear is now in long-term care. He remains grateful for all his experiences.
I've had a wonderful life, you know. Yeah.